Is generative AI innovation slowing down? Some say it is. Let's talk about it. Well, welcome back to AI Insights and Innovation, where we talk about the emerging world of generative AI and how it affects the modern enterprise. I'm your host, David Linthicum, author, speaker, B-list geek, and analyst with theCUBE Research. Let's get to work. So this is kind of an interesting story, and actually this came from a CNBC article, and I put it in the show notes. You can take a look at it in terms of really looking at AI slowing down in terms of, and I think they're talking about specifically generative AI. And it's interesting that we're going through this about 2-3 years into the hype cycle of generative AI. Remember, it kind of started in 2022. Suddenly ChatGPT was a thing, and people started focusing more on AI, even though AI has been around since the 50s. And certainly we get in and get out of it as a technology trend. And now this is kind of another sub-trend within AI, but it's a huge one. The ability to use these systems to bring value to the business, to provide them as an innovative differentiators for the business. So the slowdowns are causing a bit of concern because they're not seeing the incremental value being put into the releases, for example, of LLMs that are out there. So in other words, they're looking at 4.0 and then 5.0, which is the case with GPT, but there's other instances as well, and there's not much of a advantage or difference between the two. And it's very much like word processors. Everybody uses Word, Microsoft Word. And as we get new releases of that, it just never seems to get incrementally as advanced as, 30, 40 years ago when we first started to use word processors. So there's always this S-curve that kind of shows up around this. In other words, we see this massive growth spurt around excitement around a specific technology. And we certainly saw this with cloud and service-oriented architecture and client server and the web, which were big trends that were going on. And really, what occurs is we get to a saturation point. We kind of innovate as much as we can. We innovate based on our capabilities and understanding of the technology. And this is the case with LLMs. And any kind of incremental values that we put on top of it doesn't seem to be as big of a jump as it was in the past. So in other words, we're seeing a rise of technology and then quickly plateauing as we realize that we're not going to see the amount of value that's coming back from R&D investments, for innovative investments in this technology as we did when it first started. And it's natural because we just kind of run out of problems to solve, so to speak. That doesn't mean there aren't problems to solve, but that's the case. So this is very much like, the cloud computing stuff. It's a great analog for that. So in other words, when cloud computing arose, 2007, 2008, suddenly we had storage as a service with S3 storage from AWS, and it was a game changer in terms of our ability to store stuff over the open internet online, and people realized the value of cloud computing. Huge interest and huge growth spurt in cloud computing storage, and obviously other competitors showed up, things like that. But after a while, you kind of run out of things you can do with cloud storage. And so while we're seeing some incremental improvements, and certainly AWS does a good job in providing different APIs and different management techniques, things like that, it is not head and shoulders better than it was back in 2003. And so it's incrementally gotten a little better, but it doesn't do this massive push in terms of an innovation release that it occurs when the technology first starts. And we're seeing the same thing with generative AI. So it's a natural progression. What I do think, though, is people are seeing it much quicker, this quickly occurring than they thought it was going to occur. So in other words, they figured that generative AI was going to have an innovation run where the S-curve was going to be a lot longer, and there's going to be a growth opportunity and an innovation opportunity, which was going to go up at a 45-degree angle, for the next 3-4 years. And that doesn't seem to be the case. So things are slowing down, and obviously there's concerns from the tech industry, and enterprises are asking, what does this mean for them? And we'll dig into it. Probably the best way to do it is look at the recent explosion from 2022, 2024, a couple of years. And that's really where interest, not saying generative AI is anything new, it's a derivative of machine learning, has been around for a long time, which is a derivative of AI, which has been around since the 50s. But this isn't going to be a history lesson. We're just talking about utilization and the popularity of generative AI. And so in November 2022, they launched ChatGPT, and it transformed the public perception of AI. So in other words, AI was considered something was cool, and it was science fiction to many individuals, but it didn't really have a lot of usefulness to us. In other words, we could use it in the business context and sometimes, and certainly in research context and sometimes. But as far as use for the rank and file user, using it on your phone, using it to write notes, using it to answer emails, those sorts of things, generative AI kind of brought AI a bit into the mainstream. So it was a mass market demonstration of conversational AI capabilities, and it triggered widespread adoption and mainstream awareness and set new expectations around AI accessibility and usability. So everybody thought it was cool. So you remember the first time somebody used a LLM like ChatGPT and others, it's like it was a game changer for them in terms of the kind of technology it offered, versus the way in which they perceived AI in the past. So with that, we saw massive amounts of investment that went into the generative AI space. Microsoft spent $13 billion investment in OpenAI. Google accelerated in AI development spending. And venture capital funded AI startups. Huge amounts of venture capital flowed into this market in 2022 and is still occurring today. Major tech companies redirected resources to AI. Everybody's into AI now. It's not even a question as to if they have AI. Everybody has AI. It's the degree of AI and how it's being used in the system. And there became an arms race among the tech giants for AI supremacy, which kind of is still going on today. So everybody jumped in, very much like cloud computing and SOA and client server and the internet, and declared their intentions to lead and innovate the space, and they're throwing lots of cash into the space. And that's what occurred over the last couple of years. So GPT-3 to GPT-4, had a huge leap in capabilities, and certainly better integration, the ability to use augmented generation systems, the ability to use existing content and come up with better responses to questions that we asked ChatGPT-4 versus how we dealt with ChatGPT-3. Claude and Claude 2 from Anthropic, Google's Palm and Gemini models merged. The emergence of open source alternatives also started to rise, and we see them today. And a lot of quick iterations of specialized models. So everybody jumped into the game, and everybody's got an LLM today, a foundational model, and they have specific capabilities. But at the end of the day, with a few little features and function trade-offs, people are going to push back on me for this, but from a general use perspective, they're pretty much the same. They do the same sort of functions. If you ask them the same questions, they normally will respond with the same sort of right answers. Some cases wrong answers, but most of the time right answers. So the market impact, we saw AI company valuation skyrocket. I mean, NVIDIA is something that we haven't seen before in the marketplace. Rapid integration into existing products. Everybody adopted AI. Emergence of new AI first startups. In other words, not just companies that were existing technology companies that pivoted to AI, but purpose-built companies around the AI opportunity, and the transformation of traditional business models into leveraging AI and training AI, different skill sets, aligning the organization around uses of AI, and the creation of new job categories and roles. So it's been transformative there. In other words, we think differently than we did a couple of years ago when AI was not as much of a case. We think differently in how we're going to automate systems and utilization of generative AI. So it's had that role. It's been transformative there. However, things are slowing down. So OpenAI's GPT-5 challenges and reports indicate significantly smaller quality improvements compared to the previous generation leaps. In other words, they hit an innovation wall. And it's not that they can't think of problems to solve. They just kind of come to it like, we can do this and this and this. And the things that we're doing as part of the modifications of these models to make them more relevant and to make them better don't necessarily impact, the same sort of an innovation leap as it was from GPT-3 to GPT-4. And so the innovations are slowing down. Diminishing returns on performance gains despite increased, computational resources. So they're operating and performing. We are incrementally improving them. Things are improving in terms of performance and quality of use, but it's not at the increments or leaps and bounds, like it did 2 years ago. So it slowed down significantly. The challenges in achieving meaningful differentiation, from GPT-4 are there right now. So people are like, okay, I'm using GPT-5, and it probably makes sense that you use it. But is it, leaps and bounds better than GPT-4? Are the other LLMs that are versioning out there? No. And that's because the research R&D folks, the AI engineers, have done a bang-up job in getting a lot of the problems solved and getting a lot of the things that needed to be changed into GPT-4. And therefore, they kind of, I wouldn't say run out of problems. There's always problems to solve, but it ran out of obvious problems and run out of opportunities for significant innovation when you leap from 4 to 5. And by the way, there's analogs with other LLMs. I'm not picking on OpenAI, whether it's Gemini or some of the other LLMs that are provided by some of the bigger players like IBM and Oracle and things like that. They're running into the same sort of thing where they're not getting the incremental innovation gains moving now like they did 2 years ago. And other things we're seeing out there with Anthropic's Opus delays, removal of Opus model references from company websites, suggests technical hurdles in achieving promised capabilities, indicates potential recalibration of development timeline for expectations. Other examples include Gemini's setbacks, internal performance metrics not meeting initial expectations, delays in release schedules, struggling to achieve significant advances over existing models, and competitive pressure to match or exceed GPT-4 capabilities. So in other words, they have fewer and fewer problems to solve, and the problems that they're trying to solve, better performance, things like that, they're not necessarily seeing the incremental gains that the market was expecting. And I think that's perfectly fine because the current versions of the models were perfectly fine, for what they do. Very much like, Word, your Microsoft Word application worked very much the same 10 years ago as it does today. And so in other words, it's better, and the better quality, better tools, better configuration, usability, things like that, but not to an increment where if you did not upgrade, you would definitely see a deficit. And that's what we're seeing here. In other words, they're looking to build lots of advanced features into these things, but they kind of hit a wall in terms of their ability to do it and running out of significant problems to solve. So everything's going to be more tactically focused on strategic problems that they're dealing with. And that's what we're seeing right now. So other issues here, we're seeing some of the technical challenges. We're seeing the data wall phenomenon occurring. We're running out of high quality training data out there. You got to remember that we're training in these systems with the whole of the internet and public information, things like that. And in other words, it's been out there for a long time. And that data is not incrementally growing. So in other words, it's changing over time. It's growing in organic ways, but it's not exploding in terms of getting different data that's out there. So in other words, we're training these new models with basically the data that's sitting around that was used to train the early models. And while there is going to be a change from year to year in terms of the amount of data that's out there and the amount of data that's available, things like that, it's incrementally not significant. So exhaustion of available human-generated content, difficult in finding diverse, reliable data sources. That's a big challenge out there. And the challenge of maintaining data quality at scale, are some of the technical challenges that the LLM providers and the generative AI model builders are seeing right now. So limitations of its synthetic data, increasing reliance on AI-generated content for training, is seeing limitations as well, risk of garbage in, garbage out that we're seeing out there. So in other words, if we're going to train these systems, retrain them on synthetic data and data we're finding out on the open internet, is that data going to be reliable and up to the quality, and is it going to be truthful in its ability to build these very sound models? And then questions about sorry, I can't talk today. Questions about the ability to authenticate and originality of synthetic data as well are out there as well. So other considerations, economic implications of diminishing returns on investments. In other words, the investors are seeing not a lower amount of value that comes back from their investment. So in other words, they're giving these startups, for example, say $100 million to do research and development to incrementally improve their technology. And again, for everything we just mentioned, they're not seeing that investment come back because the R&D teams have kind of not necessarily run out of problems to solve, but they run out of the ability to have these very significant problems that they're solving, which really brings innovative value back on the business. We just run out of them. So in other words, we've done as much as we can, and we're making it incrementally better, but it's not significantly better than it was in the past. Impact on AI company valuations, investor expectations, shift in focus from model size to efficiency and specialization, and need for a new breakthrough approach beyond current paradigms. So in other words, there's nothing out there that we can go, okay, now that's something different, or like the aha moment with generative AI. That's something significant. That's something we can build a business around. And that's not occurring. And so that's why we're in the slowdown now. So in comparing to traditional tech innovation patterns, this is a classic S-curve. And we see that with all technology. Eventually, we run out of problems or significant problems to solve. We can't make the tremendous breakthroughs we did when the technology first started out, and this is via cloud and so on, the internet, and now generative AI, that it just plateaus. And so it doesn't necessarily go down, it doesn't necessarily flatten out, but it's going to be a much more shallow rise that occurs. So maybe we're operating at a 45-degree angle, and then we get to maybe a 5-degree angle. Which is not that compelling. And certainly people who are throwing money into this and the investors into this, they're just not going to see the amount of innovative value that comes back from the investments because of the S-curve effect of AI. And again, as I told you at the beginning of the show, that what's surprising here is that they hit it after about 2 years. So in other words, normally these things are about 5 years until they start hitting the S-curve. And now we're running into it. So we're at the initial breakthrough phase is part of it, the rapid innovation period, we've gone through that. And this is a natural plateau stage that we're in right now. And quite frankly, it's concerning to the people who have their careers and have their investments made in this, and they're looking at other alternative ways to get more value out of their investments, perhaps even pivoting into different technologies. So everybody's rapidly looking for, kind of new eureka things in the business as to what we can do with this technology next. And the companies aren't necessarily finding it, at least in the short term. I think we're going to hit a few things. We talked about organic learning, or the ability for these models to rebuild and learn continuously. That's something, they can do. And some people are looking into that technology, and that may provide some innovative differentiators in the system. But there's not just huge honking gaps in the technology that we're seeing right now, as we did a few years ago. So traditional tech cycles, AI development speed, role of massive R&D investment, impact of global collaboration and competition are accelerating timelines in AI and getting incrementally things out. And also, we are seeing more controlled growth. And so there is going to be concern about legal issues and copyright issues and patent issues, things like that. And so people are a little careful in terms of how they're growing the business. So what's a path forward? Well, I think it's going to be a short-term focus shift that we're going to see out in the industry. We're going to emphasize practical applications, development of AI agents, for example. The agentic opportunity is there. And certainly all of the folks who are building AI models are looking at that, but that's just another deployment model for how you deploy similar systems. While there's some things you can do to accelerate the innovation of technology, a lot of those things have been done before, and we're just deploying AI in a different way, in an autonomous way where they're running within agents. Integration into existing systems, obviously there everybody has that little star thing in the upper right-hand corner, and I think that's going to continue as well. New innovation vectors, focus on efficiency over raw power. So in other words, instead of just doing these incrementally improved chips and building these massive power consumption things, and that comes out that is able to do AI training and AI inference processing at much higher rates because they're better chipsets, things like that. Focusing on efficiency, that's a novel idea. So instead of just throwing money and time at building better and more power-hungry chips, the ability to become more efficient with the stuff you're currently doing, and even if more efficient with the chipset. I do think most of this AI stuff, generative AI stuff, is going to run on commodity processors. It's not necessarily going to run on GPUs all the time. Too expensive, too power-hungry. And for most use cases that I'm seeing out there, certainly agentic use cases, traditional platforms, traditional processors, in other words, not specialized systems, commoditized stuff will run just fine. specialized models for specific uses. We are going to see that. We're going to see verticalization of some of these models. So instead of this, huge honking, generative AI LLM that does everything, answers every question, and it will, sing you a song about you and, enhance your LinkedIn profile and all these other great things they're able to do. The ability to focus on niche areas like healthcare, healthcare management, tire shop management, the ability to look at manufacturing optimization, the ability to look at shipping and receiving and logistics and supply chain optimization. In other words, looking at small language models that just deal with a very narrow domain. And I think that's where the growth is going to occur. And obviously, the innovation there is we're just focusing these models down on specific domains. People are saying, well, that's a downgrade. We have a model that focuses on every domain. But if it does it on a particular domain, it can do it better and be more focused. And also, they're not necessarily these huge systems that enterprises can't afford to train and maintain. Incrementally, a small language model is going to run on commoditized hardware. It's going to be fairly cheap to get it up and running, and it's going to be fairly cheap to operate longer term. So that seems to be a focused area of innovation and growth. So what about the future outlook? Well, the near-term expectations are we're going to have a shift from model improvement to implementation. So not as much is going to be focused on the next release of the model that's out there. And I think people are going to care less and less about it, unless the models that they're currently using aren't able to live up to their expectations. The majority of them are. So use, implementation, use cases, how we're going to use this to make money in the business, how we're going to use this to make the business more innovative. Those are really where the focus is going to be. And so it's not necessarily going to be focusing on the technology, but what we're doing with the technology. So we get into consulting, we get into architecture, we get into optimization processes, things like that, the ability to skills augmentation to build the skills we need to support this innovation, this efficiency. All that stuff is going to be the focus moving forward. Rise of practical AI applications, industry consolidation. That's going to occur as well. We're just going to see lots of companies that are going to not necessarily go away, but buy each other. And some of the smaller startups you see right now, some of the investors there may be looking to get a quick exit with many of them, and some of them are still going to go at top dollar. Billions of dollars for companies that make little or no money is going to be what we're seeing, very much like the internet was a few years ago. Long-term possibilities, potential breakthrough technologies that we could have. I like the continuous learning stuff. I would like to see more companies focus on that. I do think there's something there, as well as other innovation possibilities where you're able to take this technology. As someone who was a CTO half a dozen times for different companies, I always think in terms of what's the next path for this technology, and how can I position the technology so the market can value it best, and also how enterprises can use it best. And I think we need to focus on that. So there are some breakthroughs that I think are going to occur over the next couple of years, but not at the level of the degree of aha that we saw with the advent of generative AI in 2022. New paradigms for AI developments, societal and economic implications are out there. So should the slowdown concern us? No, it's the natural evolution of any technology curve. These S-curves are going to be part of any rise of technology. We're going to have the early innovations and excitement and massive investments that come into the space. We certainly saw that in 2022 around generative AI. Then eventually the plateauing of the technology, and it's just going to be a natural progression. I do think the AI stuff is occurring a lot sooner than many people expected as far as its slowdown goes, but it was to be expected. So nothing is really out of the norm here in what we're seeing in the slowdown around AI innovation. So it's reframing the slowdown, as normalization of the technology, which is what it is. Current plateau follows, typical tech evolution patterns, unprecedented speed for maturation of compared to previous technologies. However, like I mentioned, it's fast. It's happening faster than we thought it was. Shift in speculative and excitement to practical reality. Healthy recalibration of industry expectations, which I think is getting to work with the technology and having it bring value back to the business. Largely, what I see is occurring now with use of AI is experimentation and building prototype systems, things like that. That's why the McKinsey stuff, you see 80% of the AI systems out there fail to return value, which means they fail. And that's because they really weren't built to return value. They were built to get people in the company and the technology stack used to, using generative AI technology. So we're moving to a practical application phase, transition from research breakthroughs to real world solutions, focus on specific, business and societal challenge. We still have to deal with the ethics solution there. We have the stuff around healthcare, which is a big to do right now. In some cases, people are overusing AI in ways that it shouldn't be, and they have ethical concerns there. I think we need to figure that out as a society. Development of sustainable business models, integration of existing workflows, emergence of specialized AI solutions. That's where the focus is going to be. So this is going to be a continual education, near-term focus on efficiency, and specialized applications is going to be the way of the future, development of more resource-conscious models. And then there is going to be an opportunity for people to, make key breakthroughs. And I think some of those are going to occur. It just won't occur at the same scale that it did back in 2022. So what are the takeaways here? Current slowdown is a natural and expected. So I get some of my technology friends and clients who contact me concerned about the fact that they see the market slowing down a bit in terms of the excitement. People aren't reading as much of the stuff that's out there. They may not be using their products as much. They're not as excited about the incremental updates of their new foundation models, and that's to be expected. And I would tell them, you're not doing much in that model that's going to make them excited about it. It's not like it was a few years ago when you were making these incremental advancements that were significant, and they grabbed everybody's attention. Those aren't occurring now. Focus shifting from raw capability to practical utility. Next phase will emphasize implementation over innovation. I think that's a good way to look at the technology now. So it becomes more important in terms of architecture and optimization and finding business use cases. Who would have thought that would be something we think about? And we need to start thinking about that now. This stuff is real expensive, and it's not going to have value unless we think about how we're going to implement it wisely. And those discussions need to occur. And then the long-term potential remains significant, however, despite that it's plateauing. And we're going to see other S-curves that emerge around generative AI, sub-markets, certainly the agentic opportunities there, the ability to build specialized small language models. We talked about that. And those are not going to be as big as the whole of the generative AI market, but they're going to be derivatives that will take the technology in different and I think more useful directions. And I think that's a good thing. Well, that's all I have for you this week. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Don't forget to follow me and my other stuff as well, my Cloud Computing Insider YouTube channel, as well as my InfoWorld blog. Also the content here that I put out on theCUBE, and keep an eye out for that CUBE research. We got a lot of stuff coming up in 2025, including looking at private AI offerings and the ability to look at the way enterprises are using this stuff effectively. I think it's going to be an exciting year for people who are monitoring the market and finding more optimized paths through the market. And that's what we do at theCUBE. So check us out. Until next time, you guys stay safe. Cheers.